From the jagged obsidian cliffs that pierced the gray sky like shattered teeth, I watched them arrive, the humans. Their ships descended with a serenity that mocked the planet's fury, slicing through storms that had unmade every native explorer. Lightning cracked across black clouds, molten rivers hissed in the valleys below, and winged predators the size of mountains circled. Yet the humans moved with a precision that seemed impossible. Each landing pod kissed the ground with deliberate calm, dust and rock erupting around them, yet nothing faltered. The Deathworlders, creatures honed by millennia of lethal adaptation, froze at the intruders. I had expected chaos, fear, slaughter. Instead, I saw measured observation, small human figures stepping from their vessels with laughter faint but unbroken, their gestures deliberate. One reached a hand toward a native clawed beast, which snarled and trembled, unsure whether to flee or attack, and still the humans smiled. Their balance on crumbling obsidian ridges seemed absurd, almost supernatural. Even the molten rivers, streams of fire that consumed all, did not intimidate them. They crossed with improvised tools, leaping from jagged stone to stone, their bodies taut with courage and their eyes calm in the chaos. I counted the predators watching from the shadows, armored, fang-lined horrors, apex hunters of this merciless world. None approached. None dared. I felt a dissonance in their instinct, an understanding, perhaps, that these humans were not prey. They were something else entirely. Then I saw it. A scout, perched on a ridge above a boiling chasm, froze, its gaze locked on movement beneath the smoke. A predator rose, a thing ancient and massive, scales glinting like molten iron, eyes the size of the humans themselves. Its claws tore into the rock, and the air trembled with its roar. The human scout did not flee. It squared its shoulders, surveyed the terrain, and began descending toward the creature with measured steps, tools in hand, determination in every motion. I, observing from my perch, felt a shiver that was neither fear nor awe, but both. The death world itself seemed to pause, watching, waiting for what would come next. And in that instant, I realized humans do not simply survive here. They defy it. The cliffside trembled beneath the predator's weight as it shifted, eyes locked on its approaching challenge. The humans were inches away. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and both would be lost in the boiling depths below. Yet they moved with purpose. And then the first sound, a low, resonant growl, vibrating through rock and air, announced that the ancient predator was awake, aware, and intent. The wind tore through the peaks, lightning crackling closer, and I knew the true test of their audacity had begun. The humans moved through the wastelands as though the landscape itself were a puzzle meant for them alone to solve. The death world's harsh winds whipped across their faces, yet they did not stumble. Their soft flesh, so fragile against this planet's brutality, seemed to mock the natural order. Each step was deliberate, each glance calculating, as though they had already memorized the paths of predators, the currents of molten rivers, and the hidden fissures that could swallow a less cautious creature whole. The aliens watched from high perches, shadowed cliffs, jagged rock spires, and we could not look away. For every predator we expected to pounce, the humans had already predicted an escape or deterrent. They were paradoxical in a way that unsettled even the most hardened Deathworlders, fragile yet indomitable, soft-skinned yet capable of outwitting creatures far larger, stronger, and more cunning than themselves. From the undergrowth, the first pack appeared. Dozens of armored behemoths, scales like jagged metal, claws sharp enough to cleave bone, and eyes burning with predatory intelligence. The humans did not scatter. They whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible over the wind, yet carrying commands that seemed to influence the environment itself. A trap was laid with elegant precision, a simple snare fashioned from thorned vines and molten rock shards, baited with remnants of their previous kill. The pack hesitated, then one by one fell victim to strategy rather than strength. I recorded every detail in awe. One human, a small figure with hands trembling from exhaustion, waded into the fray to rescue a fallen companion trapped beneath the toppled boulder. The risk was immense. Any moment could have meant certain death, yet he acted without hesitation, using tools made from fragments of the land itself, jagged stone sharpened into a makeshift lever, a rope braided from resilient vines, a flare of fire to distract the nearest predator. His companion, battered but alive, grasped his hand, and they disappeared into a narrow crevice, leaving the predators snarling and frustrated. The aliens did not understand. We observed countless species survive by cunning, by brute force, by fear, but never had we seen such empathy woven into the very act of survival. Humans saved one another, tended to injuries, and risked life after life, as though a companion's suffering demanded more than self-preservation. The contradictions of their existence, fragile yet indomitable, soft-skinned yet capable of outwitting creatures far larger, stronger, and more cunning than themselves. Night fell over the wastelands, and with it came the storms. Lightning tore across the sky in violent sheets, and torrential rains turned the already jagged terrain into a treacherous maze of slick rock and mud. The humans did not cower. They constructed shelters from living rock, using their knowledge of balance, pressure, and fire to hold jagged slabs in place against the storm's relentless force. Fires blazed in controlled arcs, their heat warding off the scavenging predators, the smoke masking their scent. We observed them calmly manipulating the elements that had claimed countless native creatures, shaping the chaos into a temporary sanctuary. By dawn, a new challenge emerged. From the distant cliffs came a pack of Deathworlders unlike any before, lithe, cunning hunters that moved as a single entity, their armor plates glinting under the dim light, jaws snapping with precision, eyes tracking each human movement. The humans were outnumbered, trapped on a narrow cliffside that threatened to collapse into the molten river below. We expected panic, disarray, carnage. They did not panic. One by one, the humans evaluated the terrain with methodical care, pointing, whispering, gesturing. Improvised weapons were readied, rocks sharpened to deadly points, fires positioned to distract or corral the hunters, spikes placed along narrow ledges to limit approach. It was a ballet of survival, each human instinctive yet calculated, each decision carrying the weight of life and death. As the predators advanced, the humans did not flee, they guided them. Fires erupted in controlled bursts, herding the pack into positions where escape was impossible, yet death was not guaranteed. A single misstep by a human could have meant annihilation, yet their movements were precise, fluid, almost ritualistic. Their strategy was not one of domination, but of orchestration, bending the predator's instincts against themselves, turning a world designed for death into a stage of survival. I shivered at the realization. Humans did not merely react to threats, they understood them, exploited them, and molded the environment in ways no native species had ever achieved. The cliffside creaked under weight and storm, rocks threatening to dislodge at any moment, but the humans advanced as one. They rescued companions from precarious ledges, provided cover for the injured, and coordinated movements that seemed impossible to execute under the relentless pressure of nature and predator alike. And then, at the precipice of disaster, the cliffside began to crumble. A massive chunk of rock slid toward the molten river, sending shards and debris clattering down. The predators lunged, sensing opportunity, teeth bared, claws extended. The humans froze for a heartbeat, calculated, aware, but then they executed a maneuver that left the alien observers reeling. One lit a flare, sending a blinding burst toward the lead predator, while another used a sharpened rock to leverage a fallen slab, blocking the pack's advance. In a sequence of movements too fast to track, the humans turned the predator's aggression against them, causing confusion, hesitation, and retreat. The aliens watched in silent, reverent awe. How could creatures so delicate endure what this world threw at them? How could they survive not merely by brute force, but by intelligence, empathy, and audacity combined? Their actions were mythic in nature, a fragile species standing unbowed in a world forged to annihilate the unworthy.
And yet, even in victory, the humans did not rest. Their eyes scanned the horizon, alert for the next threat, the next predator, the next challenge. From the shadows, I glimpsed larger forms, behemoths whose size dwarfed anything we had yet catalogued. The humans had survived a near impossible trap, but I knew instinctively that this was only a prelude. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the humans as they crouched on the precarious cliff, tools ready, muscles taut with anticipation. The death world itself seemed to exhale, recognizing a force it could not understand. And then, from the darkness below, a sound unlike any predator I had heard echoed, a deep, guttural rumble that shook the cliffside and made even the wind pause. The humans did not flinch. They looked downward. The rumble grew. Eyes widened, but not with fear, with intent, purpose. And in that moment, I knew the next encounter would test everything about them: their courage, their cunning, their unbreakable will. And I, an alien observer, could only watch, powerless to intervene, my awe tinged with a terror I had never known. The cliffside trembled beneath the unseen weight below, and the humans readied themselves. The next predator was coming, and I had no doubt they would face it with the same impossible audacity that had defied the laws of this planet itself. The alien sensors, tuned to every vibration of the Deathworld's crust and the minute shifts in its apex predator populations, recorded an escalation. A rival faction had arrived, larger, more territorial, merciless in the way only Deathworlders can be. Claws scraped stone, teeth snapped with audible crunches, and the wind carried the scent of raw aggression across the cliffs where the humans had made their fragile foothold. From my vantage point, I watched the humans, small, soft-bodied, and yet impossibly resolute, as the first wave descended. The predators struck with lightning speed, coordinated, cunning, their movements calculated by evolution itself. One massive claw tore through jagged rock near a human, sending sparks flying, yet the figure remained upright, balanced, tool in hand, assessing, calculating. The humans did not flee. They never fled. Instead, they adapted. One human rolled to the side as a predator lunged, planting a sharpened stone beneath his weight, causing the creature to stumble, a precise trap laid in mere seconds. Another leapt across a molten fissure, vines wrapped around the rock above, giving a temporary bridge, dragging a wounded companion with them. Every movement was a testament to ingenuity, cooperation, and audacity that no native predator had ever encountered. The aliens' eyes could not comprehend how soft flesh and fragile bones could survive, let alone turn the tide. They manipulated the terrain as though it were an extension of themselves.
Fires blazed in strategic arcs, smoke funneling along channels to obscure vision, and cliffs were rigged with loose boulders ready to cascade at the predator's approach. In moments, they transformed the Deathworld's natural hazards into instruments of survival, using the environment against creatures evolved for domination. A predator fell into a chasm it had thought impassable. Another stumbled over sharpened spikes that humans had placed while balancing on a trembling ledge. The choreography was precise, terrifying, and brilliant. I observed them dangling from sheer cliffs, mud and rock sliding beneath their fingers, yet moving with the certainty of predators themselves. They ran across lava fields, their boots smoldering, sparks trailing, but their steps never faltered. One human wielded a primitive spear, striking with uncanny precision, then dropped it to catch a companion mid-fall, all within heartbeats. These were acts that no evolutionarily honed predator could have predicted, acts that defied probability itself. The aliens' awe grew, mixed with fear. Even as they faced overwhelming numbers, the humans' resilience seemed spiritual, almost unnatural. Their energy was inexhaustible, their focus unbreakable, and their empathy intact. When one was pinned under a rock or caught in a predator's grasp, another human risked everything to pull them free. To survive alone might be expected, but to survive while ensuring the survival of every companion under relentless assault was incomprehensible. Chaos reigned, the cliffside trembled, rocks and molten streams mixed with the roars of predators and the sharp commands of humans. One predator lunged from the shadows, massive, armored, eyes glowing with hunger. Two humans worked in tandem, leading it toward a narrow ravine. The predator lunged, its claws tearing the air, but the humans were already ahead, forcing it into a trap. A boulder, teetering on the edge, fell with precise timing, pinning the creature long enough for the humans to escape. Every encounter tested their ingenuity. Another predator approached from above, circling the cliff ridge. The humans dangled by ropes they had fashioned, dropping weighted rocks to distract it while swinging into cover. The wind tore at their clothing, rain and molten mist stung their skin, but their movements remained fluid, calculated, fearless. No hesitation, no retreat, only relentless forward motion, improvising, cooperating, surviving. I recorded a moment that will remain burned into my memory. A predator, larger than any we had cataloged, cornered a small group near a lava pool. The humans' backs were against molten rock, fire reflecting in their eyes. One leapt forward, gripping the creature's snout with hands that should have been crushed, holding it long enough for another human to deliver a decisive strike to its flank.
It screamed, a sound that would shatter lesser species, and yet they did not flinch. Their bravery was mythic.
Their audacity impossible. And still the predators came. One predator surged from above, another from below, and the humans were surrounded. Claws met stones, teeth threatened flesh, and fire erupted around them. But every maneuver was precise, every counter-strategy calculated. Humans used leverage, gravity, terrain, even the predator instincts against them. The alien sensors could barely track the sequence of movement, so rapid, so exact. It was as though time itself had slowed for the humans alone. The battle escalated into a deadly dance. Lava splashed from fissures, sparks from molten rock illuminated the cliff in fiery flashes, and the wind carried the roars, screams, and commands in a chaotic symphony. The humans in the center remained unnervingly composed. One by one, they rescued companions, rigged new traps, and redirected predators into ambushes. Strategy over strength, ingenuity over instinct. The apex of the conflict approached as the humans reached the heart of the storm-ravaged canyon. The cliffs rose like jagged teeth around them, the lava below boiling and steaming. The predators circled, enormous, territorial, and merciless. Humans were cornered, with nowhere left to retreat. A single misstep meant annihilation, yet there was no panic, no desperation, only resolve. One human examined the canyon floor and the walls, eyes darting to every crevice, every ledge. Then, in a series of movements too fast to follow, they deployed their final countermeasures: makeshift tripwires, weighted rocks, flares, and calculated feints. The predators hesitated, confused, misdirected, trapped within the human's ingenuity. Another human clambered across a narrow ledge, directing companions, providing cover, improvising new tactics as predators adapted. From my observation point, I felt something I had never felt before: terror mixed with reverent awe. These humans were not merely surviving, they were controlling the outcome in a world designed to destroy them. Every predator strike, every natural hazard, every near-death escape reinforced the paradox: soft-skinned, fragile beings, yet capable of orchestrating chaos into victory. And then it happened. One predator lunged, claws extended, directly at the center of the human group. The humans split, moving in perfect coordination, drawing it toward a spike-laden ledge. The predator fell into the trap, pinned by its own momentum, allowing the humans to regroup. But their relief was brief. From above, another predator, a hulking, armored brute, descended, eyes glowing with deadly intelligence. Humans scrambled, leapt, swung, yet the canyon offered no escape. Lightning crackled across the storm-darkened sky, illuminating the humans as they crouched, poised and ready. Dust, fire, and molten steam swirled around them. Claws and teeth closed in from all directions. Yet there was no fear, only purpose, only courage beyond understanding. And as the canyon echoed with roars and human commands, I, an alien observer, felt the full weight of the paradox. These beings, fragile as they appeared, embodied an audacity, a resilience, and a coordination that no predator, no environment, and no logic could predict or counter. They were impossible, and they were alive. The predators closed in, the humans braced, the canyon trembled, and I knew with certainty that this moment, the apex of chaos, fear, and audacity, was only the beginning of what this species was capable of. The aftermath was a strange calm, a silence unlike any the Deathworld had known. The predators had withdrawn, leaving only traces of their fury in torn vegetation and scorched rock. Yet the humans did not rest. They moved with a ritualistic intensity, as if every gesture, every step, was a ceremony of survival. From my vantage point, perched on the highest cliff overlooking the wastelands, I observed them cataloging, examining, experimenting. They were no longer simply reacting. They were learning. One human knelt beside a luminescent plant whose sap burned with an acidic heat. With careful precision, they harvested a portion, crushing it between fingers to extract its medicinal properties. Another mapped the movement of predators across the terrain, marking paths where claws had carved grooves into rock, noting the patterns of pack hunting and ambush. Every action was deliberate, and every human seemed to possess an instinctive understanding of the planet, yet guided by intelligence beyond instinct. Shelters rose where none could have existed before.
Humans combined jagged stone, twisted vines, and molten debris, forming structures that defied collapse even under the relentless storms. Lightning tore across the sky, rain lashed the ground with crushing force, yet their creations stood, steadfast and purposeful. Fire, carefully controlled, illuminated their temporary sanctuaries, warding off scavengers and providing warmth. I recorded every detail with a growing sense of disbelief. Their ingenuity was relentless, fearless, and adaptive. They tended not only to themselves, but to the wounded Deathworlders. One human approached a creature pinned beneath a fallen boulder, careful not to provoke its claws, and applied a makeshift splint to a shattered limb. Another guided a pack of smaller predators away from a hazardous ledge, using food and fire to influence their movement. Empathy, coordination, and intelligence interwoven in acts of survival. I could not parse such behavior within any natural paradigm I had cataloged. Suspense escalated when a low tremor shook the ground. From a fissure deep within the planet's bowels emerged a predator unlike any encountered before. It was enormous, armored with ridged plates that reflected the dim light, eyes glowing with sentience and hunger. It moved deliberately, calculating each step, assessing the humans as if testing their limits.
The humans observed it in turn, not with terror, but with analysis, strategy, and unyielding composure. They turned the environment into a weapon. A series of boulders was positioned to collapse upon the predator if it charged too far, while sharp stakes concealed beneath volcanic ash awaited its first misstep. Fires were arranged to channel the creature into narrow corridors, limiting its advantage of size. One human climbed to a precarious ledge, releasing a weighted vine to trip the predator's legs at the precise moment. Their actions were orchestrated with a precision that made the predators hesitate, misjudge, and falter. I watched, unable to comprehend the audacity. These humans were not merely surviving. They were mastering a world that had been designed to annihilate all but the strongest. Their ingenuity transformed chaos into order, danger into opportunity. Every failed strike from the predator was countered by human innovation, every threat neutralized by a combination of instinct, foresight, and calculated experimentation. Yet their genius was not purely mechanical or tactical, it was holistic. One human knelt to inspect the tracks of a fallen predator, noticing the injury it had sustained during prior encounters. They adjusted a trap, factoring the creature's altered behavior into their calculations. Another administered aid to a companion, using harvested plants to staunch bleeding, their actions guided simultaneously by compassion and practicality. The merging of empathy and survival created an aura around them that the death world itself seemed to acknowledge. These were beings not just of flesh, but of purpose, intelligence, and indomitable will. As the hours passed, the predator adapted, testing every trap, every strategy. But the humans adapted faster. They anticipated its movement, corrected mistakes instantly, and manipulated the terrain to favor their strengths. From my cliffside vantage, I saw the predator hesitate, caught in a web of ingenuity it could not escape, forced to retreat momentarily into the shadows from which it had emerged. The humans' faces were smeared with ash and sweat, their clothes torn, yet there was no fear, only calculated anticipation, preparation for the next phase. Night fell, heavy and silent, the storm clouds dissipating to reveal alien skies strewn with unfamiliar constellations. The humans established camp with meticulous care, fires casting long, wavering shadows across the jagged terrain. Each fire's placement, each shelter's orientation, every precaution reflected planning honed by experience and instinct. They were alert, listening for the faintest tremor, the subtlest whisper of movement beneath the rocks, yet their posture was composed, almost regal. I observed them as they shared food, exchanged whispered instructions, and maintained watch over one another. They laughed softly at small victories, tended wounds, and offered reassurance, displaying a camaraderie that I could not compute.
Even in the deadliest environment, even after facing creatures designed to kill without thought, they maintained their humanity, resilient, compassionate, adaptive. From my observation point, I realized something profound. Humans were no longer merely creatures inhabiting the death world, they were a force of nature. Their influence radiated outward, reshaping the environment not through domination, but through understanding, respect, and unmatched audacity. Where the predators had once held the advantage, humans now dictated the terms of engagement. Even the planet itself seemed to yield, recognizing in some inexplicable way that these fragile beings were extraordinary, defying logic, evolution, and expectation. Suddenly, a low, resonant rumble shook the ground. A fissure opened in the distance, glowing with molten light, revealing the predator's larger counterpart, an entity of intelligence and power that dwarfed all prior adversaries. Its approach was deliberate, every step measured, every eye focused on the humans below. The humans reacted instantly. Fires were repositioned, boulders shifted, and improvised barriers reinforced. One human climbed a high ledge, ropes in hand, to manipulate terrain traps, while another led a companion to safety. Every action was synchronized, almost instinctive, yet driven by calculation and foresight. I recorded, fascinated and fearful, as the predator tested their defenses, only to be met by human innovation at every turn. They were thriving where no life should. In the planet's hostile extremes, they built, adapted, healed, and outmaneuvered. Each innovation, each act of courage, deepened my awe. I had cataloged species that survived against incredible odds, but never had I seen beings so delicate exert control over death itself, bending nature's fury to their will through ingenuity, empathy, and fearless experimentation. As night deepened, the humans settled into watchful positions under alien skies, the predator's presence lingering as a shadow in the distance. Fires flickered across the jagged landscape, reflecting in their eyes the determination that had carried them through the day. They were battered but unbroken, cautious but undeterred. I realized with mounting certainty the challenges ahead would be greater, yet I had no doubt they would meet them. They were humans, they adapted, they endured. And the death world waited, watching, testing, and yet yielding, for it had never encountered a force quite like them. The storm arrived with no warning, a cataclysmic force that tore through the death world with unrelenting fury. Clouds blacker than obsidian rolled across the sky, lightning splitting the heavens with deafening cracks, and rain fell in sheets that could strip flesh from bone. Molten rivers surged over cliffs, landslides rumbled down mountainsides, and predators of every stripe and size roared in confusion and terror.
Yet in the midst of chaos, the humans remained poised, their small forms moving with intent across a world that would have annihilated any native species without thought. I observed from a high ridge, shielded partially by the overhang of a jagged cliff. The humans navigated the onslaught as if the storm were a puzzle to solve, a deadly riddle to outwit rather than a force to flee. Lava surged across valleys, yet they leapt with precise timing, swinging over molten streams with ropes and improvised bridges. Landslides threatened to bury them, yet they calculated each step with uncanny foresight. One human ran along a crumbling ledge to reach a companion trapped beneath debris, risking the fall of the cliff with every motion. Their hands, their feet, their entire bodies defied the odds, and every rescue was executed with empathy that no predator could comprehend. Predators surged from the shadows, creatures ancient, massive, cunning, and relentless. The humans did not meet them with blind strength. Instead, they manipulated behavior, herding predators into paths that gave them advantage, luring the largest hunters into molten traps, or using fire to corral and control movement. One human climbed a high ridge, positioning a reflective shard of obsidian to redirect lightning in precise arcs, scaring off predators below. Another created improvised barricades with fallen debris, stabilizing them with vines and molten rock to withstand both the storm and attacking creatures. Each action was deliberate, a choreography of survival, executed under conditions that would kill native Deathworlders without hesitation. One human dangled above a molten chasm, reaching with one hand to steady a companion while the other struck a predator with a jagged stone. Sparks flew, teeth snapped, and yet the humans did not falter. The alien observers could barely follow the sequence, so fast, so precise, it was as if they moved outside the bounds of ordinary time. Their empathy persisted even amidst the maelstrom. When one human was trapped by a surge of lava, others coordinated to pull them free, braving fire and smoke that should have consumed them. When a predator lunged at a wounded companion, a human intercepted, guiding the creature into a trap that had been set mere moments before. Each act combined courage, intelligence, and selflessness, reinforcing a pattern that seemed almost supernatural in its execution. The storm's apex collided with the arrival of a colossal predator, its size dwarfing every known creature of the Deathworld. Armor plates reflected flashes of lightning, its eyes, glowing with cunning, tracked the humans with a methodical, calculating gaze. The humans assessed it instantly, scanning the terrain, improvising weapons and traps on the fly,
predicting the creature's every move. Lava flows were diverted using rocks and fires, collapsing ledges to limit its mobility, forcing it toward areas designed to neutralize its advantage.
Every step, every maneuver demonstrated a combination of ingenuity and audacity that defied logic. One human swung across a fissure, releasing weighted ropes that tumbled boulders onto the predator's path. Another coordinated with companions below to use fire and sound as distraction, forcing the creature to hesitate. Each predator's miscalculation amplified the human's advantage, and yet none of their actions were reckless. They were precise, strategic, and fluid, as though orchestrated by an unseen hand. I recorded the human spacefish in the stormlight, smeared with mud and ash, hair plastered to their heads, clothes torn by wind and rock. Their eyes, however, reflected clarity and focus, not fear. Even in the most impossible scenarios, they assessed, adapted, and acted. When a landslide separated a pair of humans, another risked a jump across molten rock to reach them, anchoring a rope with their own body weight, stabilizing the cliff, and pulling them to safety. Each action, though small, had the weight of life and death, and each succeeded against staggering odds. The storm grew ever more violent, yet the humans' coordination never faltered. They communicated in whispers, gestures, and glances, each aware of the other's position, each predicting and compensating for movement and hazard. Predator after predator tested their ingenuity, yet the humans turned every assault into an opportunity. One massive beast lunged at a ledge. Humans manipulated a fissure's molten flow, forcing it to slip and be pinned under falling debris. Another predator attempted a flank from above. Humans responded by collapsing a rock wall, forcing it into a narrow trap lined with spikes and fire. Even the alien observers, long accustomed to cataloging survival on the deadliest worlds, were stricken by disbelief. Humans did not merely survive, they transformed their environment, bending lethal hazards to their will. Lava became pathways, predators became instruments of control, storms became opportunities to display audacity. Every act combined intelligence, foresight, empathy, and bravery in ways that made the concept of survival insufficient. They were orchestrating life itself. As the storm reached its zenith, a sequence of challenges forced split-second decisions. A predator lunged toward a wounded human on a narrow ledge. Another companion, recognizing the danger, sacrificed position, using momentum and improvised tools to redirect the predator's attack while the injured human escaped. A massive rockslide threatened to sever the humans from their path to higher ground, yet they coordinated a leap across unstable terrain, timing movements with lethal precision. Every obstacle revealed not panic, but ingenuity, each rescue a testament to courage that bordered on mythic. The ultimate standoff approach, the apex predator, enormous, armored, and cunning, blocked the human's path at the heart of a storm-lashed canyon. Lava surged beneath, lightning crackled overhead, and smaller predators circled, sensing opportunity. The humans paused, not with fear, but with calculation. They assessed angles, the predator's behavior, and environmental hazards simultaneously. Then, in a sequence too rapid for the untrained eye, they executed a plan of audacity and precision bordering on genius. One human led the predator toward a narrow gorge where previously placed boulders and fires formed a controlled trap. Another synchronized movement with companions, using sound and light to misdirect and channel the predator's motion. Sparks from molten rock reflected across weapons and shields, creating illusions of multiple attackers. The predator faltered, misjudging speed and trajectory, and was forced into a confined space where fire, spikes, and falling debris combined to neutralize its advantage. As I observed, I realized that humans were no longer merely participants in survival. They were conductors of the world itself, orchestrating chaos into a calculated symphony. Every predator misstep, every environmental hazard mitigated or manipulated, every act of bravery enhanced their legend. I, a witness, felt awe and fear, for these creatures were unlike any life known in the galaxy. Their audacity, intelligence, and empathy combined into an almost supernatural force. The apex predator roared, trapped and disoriented, yet alive. The humans advanced with cautious confidence, tending to companions, stabilizing terrain, and preparing for further threats. Their resilience radiated across the canyon, a signal to the death world itself. This species would endure, adapt, and thrive in conditions that annihilated all others. Lightning illuminated their faces as they regrouped, surveying the carnage and chaos they had navigated. Mud, ash, and blood smeared their bodies, clothes torn, muscles strained to the limit.
yet they were alive. And more than that, they had imposed their will on a world that should have destroyed them. I, alien observer, felt a profound shift in understanding. Humans were not just survivors, they were forces of nature, transforming even a death world designed for annihilation into a stage on which they could demonstrate intelligence, courage, and empathy simultaneously. The storm raged on, the apex predator immobilized but alive, and humans prepared to move onward. I watched them, realizing that no analysis, no evolution, no calculation could predict what they would do next. They were impossible, incomprehensible, and magnificent. The death world trembled beneath the fury of storm and predator alike, yet in the heart of chaos, humans stood unbroken, commanding the environment, bending life and hazard to their audacious will. The storm had passed, leaving the death world drenched in molten mist, shattered rock, and the lingering echoes of predator roars. Lightning no longer split the sky, but the clouds remained dark, heavy with the memory of fury.
From my vantage point, I observed the humans emerging from the chaos. They stood atop cliffs, jagged and blackened by fire, surveying the wastelands that had tried and failed to consume them. Each figure was battered, clothing torn, bodies scarred, yet unbroken, and in their stance a quiet authority radiated. The humans did not rejoice in domination. They did not celebrate conquest. They moved among the wounded, both companion and native Deathworlder, tending with gentle hands, stabilizing fractures, applying sap and poultices, and guiding creatures to safety. I observed one small human cradle a massive clawed predator, calming it with soft gestures, as if understanding flowed between species. Another human guided a pack away from unstable cliffs, leading them to areas where the terrain posed no immediate threat. Their empathy was deliberate, precise, and unwavering, even after days of cataclysm and peril. In every motion, in every interaction, humans displayed something beyond instinct or learned behavior. They were adaptive, not merely for survival, but for understanding. They mapped terrain intuitively, using fire, sound, and light to manipulate behavior without cruelty. They crafted temporary shelters that could withstand storms and predator strikes, and their tools, improvised from jagged rock, molten debris, and resilient flora, were extensions of thought, not mere instruments. Their ingenuity transformed the death world from an environment of pure annihilation into a stage for survival, intelligence, and empathy intertwined. The alien observers, myself included, felt awe that bordered on fear. This species, so fragile in appearance, had endured storms that toppled mountains, predators that had annihilated generations of evolved hunters, and the planet itself in violent rebellion. And yet they had not only endured, they had reshaped their surroundings without arrogance or heedless destruction, bending the world to their understanding rather than attempting to dominate it blindly. Small acts reinforced this understanding. One human extended aid to a wounded predator, binding its leg with improvised splints. Another guided a companion away from a lava fissure while simultaneously reinforcing a precarious bridge of rock and vine. Yet another adjusted a fire line to direct a pack of smaller predators away from unstable ground. Each movement was precise, deliberate, and compassionate, revealing an intelligence and adaptability beyond what we aliens had ever considered possible. As the sun, or what passed for daylight through the thick clouds, broke across the jagged peaks, the humans climbed higher, standing in a silent tableau at the cliff's edge. From my distant observation, I felt as though the planet itself had paused to acknowledge them. They surveyed the lands they had traversed, molten rivers, scarred plateaus, and predator territory partially subdued, not through force, but through understanding, audacity, and calculated interaction. Even the largest Deathworlders now retreated in respect rather than terror, sensing a shift in the balance of dominance and intellect. The humans moved as a unit, yet each carried their own strength of purpose. They exchanged no grand gestures, no words of triumph, yet every glance, every coordinated movement spoke of endurance, resilience, and connection, both to one another and to the death world itself. Their empathy extended beyond their own species. They forged bonds with the environment in subtle, deliberate ways. Streams were diverted to support safe passage, scorched plants were carefully preserved, and unstable cliffs stabilized with improvised engineering. In these acts, the humans did not seek to dominate. They sought to understand, adapt, and coexist without diminishing the life around them. From my alien perspective, this was incomprehensible. I had cataloged countless species surviving impossible worlds, yet never had I observed a being capable of such synthesis: courage paired with compassion, audacity with deliberation, intelligence with empathy.
These humans transformed chaos into order, peril into opportunity, and terror into understanding. They had become more than survivors. They were architects of life itself on a world designed to annihilate. As evening fell, the humans prepared to move onward. Fires burned softly in their camps, illuminating faces streaked with ash and sweat, eyes bright with unbroken resolve. They shared provisions, attended wounds, and quietly coordinated plans for the unknown challenges yet to come. Their silence was not fear, but anticipation. Their eyes, reflecting alien stars through mist and smoke, hold the promise of future audacity. I watched as they descended from the cliffs, moving with deliberate cadence toward the horizon. The Deathworld spread below, scarred but partially tamed, a landscape transformed not through conquest, but through understanding and mastery of its hazards. Lava rivers had been navigated, predators circumvented or trapped, shelters erected, and environmental hazards mitigated, all by beings whose fragility should have doomed them. And yet they thrived. In that moment, I recognized a truth that no alien system of analysis had anticipated. Humans were not merely exceptional, they were singular. Where other species relied on strength, instinct, or sheer adaptation, humans combined intellect, empathy, courage, and audacity in a pattern that defied comprehension. They could navigate extremes, master the impossible, and emerge unbroken, reshaping the world around them without reckless domination. Their final movement across the horizon was almost mythic. One by one, humans moved forward, tools at the ready, fires extinguished, wounds tended, and eyes scanning for new dangers. Each step was deliberate, fearless, and purposeful. The death world stretched infinitely before them, unforgiving, lethal, and alive. And yet they walked into it as though it were a landscape waiting to be understood, not conquered. The aliens, including myself, remained silent witnesses, awash in awe, fear, and an inescapable admiration. Across the galaxy, I had cataloged species that survived on the edge of extinction, yet none exhibited this combination of resilience, ingenuity, empathy, and audacity. Humans were impossible to predict, impossible to control, impossible to categorize. They were in every sense a force unlike any known. Even as shadows deepened and alien stars pierced the sky, their presence transformed the landscape. Lava flows cooled into navigable paths, predator tracks shifted in deference, and broken cliffs bore the marks of human ingenuity. The death world itself seemed to acknowledge them, not with submission, but with recognition. These were beings that could bend even a world of lethal design without destroying it recklessly. And as they vanished into the horizon, moving toward unknown challenges, I realized the truth that would haunt every alien observer henceforth. Humans were more than remarkable. They were unparalleled. Their courage was inexhaustible, their ingenuity limitless, their resilience mythic. They did not merely survive, they transformed the impossible into the attainable. The death world faded behind them, its storms dispersed, predators regrouping, but its memory altered forever. Humans had left marks not of domination, but of comprehension, audacity, and empathy. They had walked into chaos and emerged as architects of their own survival, turning a world designed to kill into a stage of extraordinary achievement. And I, alien observer, could only watch, filled with reverent fear and awe. In a galaxy of deadly worlds, in a cosmos of impossible hazards and evolved predators, humans stood alone in their audacity. No creature, no storm, no calculation could predict the limits of their courage. The universe would learn, if it ever could, that humans were a force unlike any other, fragile yet indomitable, soft-skinned yet unparalleled in resilience, fearless, ingenious, and unyielding. And as they disappeared into the horizon, tools in hand, eyes scanning the stars, they left behind a simple truth written in every scarred rock and quiet predator retreat. Where humans walk, impossible becomes possible. Where humans endure, hope becomes legend. And in a galaxy that tests life not just survivors, they are extraordinary. The death world breathed a quiet, heavy exhale, acknowledging the force that had walked through it, and I, alien observer, remained in awe.